so you know.
Welcome to Business SOS podcast. This is Rich Sierra, president of the Florida Small Business Legal Center. This is episode 73 of Business SOS, so we keep plowing away to more episodes as we get closer to episode 100. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to flip the script. Today I am the guest, and I'm honored to have my friend and colleague, Angela Neave, who will be doing the interview for me today about the Business SOS podcast, and I will be the one who will be answering the questions. So take it away, Angela.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Very well, thank you.
Good. Rich, I've known you for several years now, and I watched you as you write this book, and I watched the labor of love that you put into it, and I got to say, I have learned so much from you as a business person, and I enjoyed hearing all of your insights. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what made you write this book?
Angela, that's a very good question. I've been writing the book for over 10 years now. That was kind of an idea that I had 10 years ago, and I began to kind of refine the idea. I think the book was going to be called First Initial Consultations, and then we switched the topic to Business SOS to give it more urgency. And I wrote the book because business owners have the same problems. But this is my 20th year of practice. It's actually in October. And I've interviewed a number of over 1,000 business owners or more in my career. And the problems were the same recurrent problems. And I can only reach so many people through the consultations. So I thought, why not write a book so I can reach a wider audience? And if a business owner reads the book and avoid some of these mistakes, then I've done what I wanted to accomplish. So, I wanted to reach out to business owners and give them that guidance and how to avoid common mistakes that business owners make, especially in the legal field, legal area, and not fall into pitfalls that could really devastate their business.
Well, I love that. And I want to go back really quick to what you said about the name of the book before you decided Business SOS. So talk to me about why that was going to be the name as far as the initial consultation. So tell me a little bit about that. What was your thought process?
I actually had a logo and everything. And because really what my idea was to have, what would be like a first consultation with an attorney be like? And that would be, they come with legal questions, and this is what you would hear in that first initial meeting.
Okay, so I know that you do consultations for business owners when they may have a legal issue.
Yes.
So was it originally going to be a couple of ideas or things you wanted to talk about that recurring themes that come up in those consultations?
Yes, I think the way I titled it was 7 common mistakes. We added an 8th one as we developed the book.
Right.
But yes, it was, we're talking about contracting and, breach of contract claims, partnership disputes. And the idea was to give you a flavor of what it would be like to actually talk to me in that first initial meeting.
Right. So they have information before they even come in. If they got a hold of your book or were listening to your podcast, they could then come in and already have some information and be able to ask you a few additional questions.
Correct, yes. Also, it might give them the answer too. They might not need to call me or call an attorney. So it's just, give them an idea, and also how to, and I referred to this in a prior podcast, is really how to look at the yellow lights in your business before you actually reach the red light.
Right. I think that's a really great concept, because I got to tell you, when I got your book, the first chapter I read was chapter 4, which was about signing a commercial lease without an attorney. And it really impacted the way I thought about my own leases, and I am an attorney. But before we get to that, I know you dedicated this book to your mother, Rosa. So I wanted you to tell your listeners a little bit about what impact her business ownership had on you and what you learned from her.
No, Mom has a great impact on me. I mean, she had a small beauty shop in Levittown, Puerto Rico for over 30 years. And she basically been a business owner, her life. She retired in COVID. COVID forced her out to not to do any more hair, any more services for hair salons.
So that was recent. That was only a couple of years ago.
Yeah, she retired. Yeah, but she was, the shop was in Puerto Rico for 30 years, and then she relocated to Florida. But what impressed me about Mom is basically her tenacity and her business savvy and hiring the right people, having the right customers, keeping customers, coming back. And basically that's what put me through high school, through college. And I honestly don't know how she did it, because now that I have a better understanding of business, I don't know what miracle she pulled together to do that. So I'm truly very, grateful for her to do that for me.
So what a great learning experience, because you essentially grew up watching her act as a business owner. And I know from my own experience and our experience together, you and I, that learning how to operate a business is not intuitive.
No.
There is a lot that goes on behind the curtain, so to speak, about hiring, HR, dealing with people, managing the workload. So what a great gift it was for you to watch her do all of that. Do you know whether or not she went to business school or had any coaching or anything like that? Or was she just a dynamo who did an amazing job running a business?
Pretty much that. I mean, she went to cosmetology school, a statistician school, and she was always adding new services, but she basically learned through hard knocks and through other business owners also guiding her as well. But there was no business school per se.
Right.
She did it the hard way. Yeah.
So I understand that. I think a lot of the best lessons we learn are the school of hard knocks, because they are lessons that we never forget.
Yes.
Before we get on to the book, tell me a little bit. Can you think of one lesson that you learned through the school of hard knocks?
Oh my God.
There are so many. Where do we begin?
How do we have time? I think that getting, when I started my practice, one of the first things that I did, this is my second business. I used to own a healthcare job board on the web, selling ads online, and that's when the internet began, selling ads and having the large job boards like Monster.com, but I had one for healthcare.
Right.
Then I sold it in 2002, and then I went to law school in 1998 in the evening program at NSU, Nova Southeastern University. So I said, okay, so I sold my business, and I said I graduated from law school. And I thought it was a good idea to open my law practice without any experience. That was a really bad idea, and I do not recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, sometimes it's always easier to learn from somebody else's mistakes first.
Yes. And so I learned the hard way. Coming out of law school, you really do not know much of what you're doing. And that's, you don't know that information when you come out of law school, because they don't tell you that.
Right. They don't teach you how to operate a law firm, essentially, when you're in law school. You learn the law, you learn how to review a case, you might even learn how to put on a trial, but you don't learn how to operate a business.
Yeah, you don't. And so I was fortunate enough to have my friend Mara Schlackman, you might know her. So she, for 2 years, mentored me. So pretty much out of my fees, I paid her to help me, teach me the process in drafting, pleadings, answering interrogatories. And I'm forever grateful for her guidance and for teaching me that. And then also, as I developed more cases, because I'm very good at business development, I was fortunate enough to have good opposing counsels. And you learn from your colleagues that are on the other side.
Yep.
And I was fortunate to really have sharp counsels that I saw their work, and I kind of emulate their work. And some of them, we ended up, after cases were over, some time passed, some of them I ended up working together in some cases co-counsel as well. So
that's really lucky, actually.
Yeah.
So you talk about having a mentor who taught you how to, say, draft the motions and do the hearings. What about the business end? Did you have someone helping you with that when you first came out of law school, or did you already have that experience because you had done something before?
I had that experience already. I mean, you're still learning. The business of law is very different from running any other business. There's some similarities, but I already had that experience running my online, advertising business. Mm-hmm. So I knew online advertising, I knew about sales, I knew about marketing, I knew about operations, billing. So I kind of had that background already with me before I opened my law practice. So that really helped me. Then obviously I went to other courses along the way.
Right. And I think that's one of the really great things that I have learned from you over the years that I've known you, is the way you evaluate your numbers and the way you make business decisions, and how you've helped me look at things in a different way so that I can make better decisions for my business. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
It just sounds to me like you were a natural businessman. When you came out of the gate, you were deciding you wanted to be a business owner, and you started off as a business owner. Does that sound about right?
Yes. And I wanted to, once I sold my other business, I wanted to go into a business law practice. I just felt comfortable in that environment. I was comfortable around business owners. I understand their pain, quote unquote. I understand their challenges. I understand when a business owner receives a lawsuit, it's just, even if they're right, if they have everything in place to defend it, it could devastate their business if it's not managed correctly.
Absolutely.
So I understand that. So I felt comfortable, and that has been my practice for 20 years. It's only talking to business owners.
So what made you decide to go to law school, just briefly?
It was a passion of mine. Since I was in high school, I kind of wanted to become an attorney. And I almost gave up that dream at some point because I worked for hospitals before and I enjoyed that. I was going to go into hospital administration route. It was just not my calling. And then there was an ad, actually, I remember 1997 or so, there was an ad from NSU Law having an open house. And I saw it on a Sunday and I'm like, you know what, let me go to the open house, see what happens. And I went there. They said, we still have applying for this fall class. And I said, okay, I'll take the LSAT. And if I get accepted, I'll go. If I don't, I'm done.
Right.
So the rest is history.
That's a little bit like how I did it. I know that I knew I was going to law school, but I didn't really have a plan. And I applied and I got accepted. And then halfway through the semester, they asked me how I was going to pay for it. And I'm really glad that I decided to go and jump in feet first, because if I had spent any time thinking about it, I probably would not have gone.
Yeah.
Knowing the kind of work and, the effort that it takes to get through law school.
Yeah, we do not know that coming in.
No, and thank goodness, right? We would never go to law school if we knew how hard it was,
yes,
before we did it.
Yes. But I'm glad I did it. It's one of those, and my mom is very happy. It was her dream,
The son that's the lawyer.
Yes. So she says, you got to go to law school. You got to go to law school. So she was right. So.
Yeah. So do you enjoy practicing law?
Yes.
That's good.
There are aspects like any business that you enjoy the most, and some aspects you do not enjoy. I do enjoy helping my clients and getting them out of those legal problems that in some cases they get in by themselves. In some cases, they're really not fault of their own.
Right.
And I really enjoy helping the ones that really that I know that I'm their last resort.
Right. I bet it's very rewarding to help those people out of their troubles or show them a path to a way to resolve those issues.
Yes. And in some cases that I have them dealing with a case now that, a client that for some reason went online and just did an online form for information. And she ended up getting sued for $100,000 for a contract she never signed. And the client is out of state. Limited means she said, I have no idea what I got sued for. And that she said, I don't have that much money. She paid me some, and I said, okay, we'll do this. I'll take care of the rest from the other side. And we were able to get it dismissed.
That's good.
But I was the last resort.
Right. Otherwise, she might have had a huge judgment against her that would have followed her around, and they could renew that judgment after a certain period of time. It really could have followed her for a very long time.
For something that she had no idea that she was going to be sued for, or she never entered into the contract in the first place.
Right.
And unfortunately, now with online, forms, people might inadvertently, in fact, she did not even sign a contract. It was somebody can create a contract and send you a lawsuit. And
so is this like a scam?
It's fraudulent. It is fraudulent, yes.
Interesting. So Business SOS is sort of like a lifeline that you kind of throw out to people.
Yeah.
And then, they can kind of learn a few things. And then if they still have more questions, they can reach out to you.
Correct. Yes. And this was not a mistake that she made. She just,
right.
At all. It's simply something that she filled out an online form for information, and that somehow morphed into this contract that never existed in the first place.
Right. Well, I think sort of we have to be, everyone, not just business owners, but people need to be savvy about what their information they're putting out there online, because exactly that kind of situation can come up.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to get to your fourth mistake here, signing a commercial lease without an attorney. And this was the first chapter I read in your book because I made this mistake. And I'm an attorney, and I thought, I can handle this. I know how to read a contract. I draft contracts every single day. But why would you recommend that even an attorney business owner hire someone to review a lease?
It's a great question, and that's a very common mistake, and that's why I put it in the book. Lease agreements are probably the second most important, larger, not investment, the larger expense you will have as a business owner.
Yes, my lease is very expensive.
Next to payroll,
Yes.
will be your lease agreement. And for whatever reason, business owners discount that. They don't really give it the attention that it deserves. They are excited to go into a business, and they go to a strip mall, to an office, and the property manager gives them this contract and there's term sheets, and they sign them without reading them. And they need to look at those provisions. Even attorneys that do not understand lease agreements, they should have an attorney review it. There are a lot of, the lease agreement is 100% pro-landlord. It is not a pro-tenant document. It is not a document that is going to help the tenant.
Right. I think that's actually really important for your listeners, because I know I approached it thinking, oh, this is going to be beneficial to both of us. And it's not. And so when I read that in your book, I had to think about it. You're absolutely correct. This really protects the landlord and gives the landlord remedies for things, but doesn't necessarily protect me and give me remedy for things.
Correct. The remedies that you have as tenant are very limited. There's some. They're not. It's not that you don't have any remedies through the lease. There are very few remedies that you have. So what happened is that if somebody goes into a lease agreement, and I think I put the example of a $3,000 a month lease. Okay, so you're getting into a $60,000 a year contract times 5. I mean, 360,000. I think it's the math correctly. So people are going into hundreds of thousands of dollar contract from a lease agreement. Yet they do it without having an attorney review it. And there's some negotiability within the lease, not much, but there was some.
Oh, I like that. So let me ask you then, what types of lease terms are negotiable versus ones that tend to be non-negotiable?
You can negotiate sometimes as a rent starting date, for example, if you, depending how motivated the landlord is to have a tenant in the property, the landlord might give you 1 or 2 months free rent.
Right.
The landlord might give you a break on the deposit as well.
Okay.
The landlord will will have some build out for you if necessary, depending what type of office you have, what type of business you have. They might say, you know what, I'm going to give you some concessions. We'll have somebody here fix this for you. Maybe you need carpeting. There's some things you can negotiate with the landlord. And I also recommend to anybody going into a lease, get your AC inspection done. Get somebody to inspect everything within that you're responsible for.
Okay, so if the lease says that you're responsible for the AC unit for your office suite, let's say, or whatever, your area, if you're in a warehouse or if you're in a commercial space, you want to have that inspected first. So you might know, I'm going to have to replace this in 2 years, or no, it was just replaced. I've got a good 5 years if I'm signing a 5-year lease.
Correct, yes. And what happens to this is that, say they sign a 5-year lease, but the tenant before that AC has been there for about 10 years. Okay, the landlord would say, but when you come into this lease onto property, it's going to be working order. And in fact, they might even say, well, it's going to be working for the next 90 days. But you're responsible for repairs and maintenance and replacement. So you have to look at the number of years you're going to be in that property and have an AC company inspect the AC at your own expense. It's worth $200. Sometimes they do it for free. And tell you, okay, listen, this unit's going to last you maybe another 2 years.
Right.
And you're going to end up stuck with a $10,000 bill if you do not negotiate that from the beginning and tell the landlord, listen, just to let you know, this unit's not going to last another 2 years. I'm here for 5 years. I'm not replacing your AC.
Right.
I'm not getting you a new AC. So you put in the lease that you will be replacing that AC.
Got it.
And also you can cap the repairs to $300. So I'm not going to spend $8,000 for repairing your AC or replacing it. So you can negotiate those terms beforehand, but you have to have those inspections.
I like that. So that's an example of a great negotiable term that business owners need to know, because I didn't know that. And I feel lucky that in my lease, the building is taking care of that kind of stuff. And I imagine it's because they want control over those things and don't want every different, office tenant putting in a different kind of AC unit. But that actually brings up something that comes up for me often. I want to ask you so you can talk to your listeners about it. I have an AC unit with my office suite, but I share it with another office suite, and they have direct sunlight. And so for them, if they had control over the AC, they would keep their temperature much lower. And the controls are in my office, but what typically happens is if I turn it so that it's a comfortable space for us, it's very warm for them because they get that direct sun. And if we turn it down for when it's comfortable for them, we are walking around in our office wearing blankets because it's so cold. So I guess my question is there some remedy for that? Because I didn't negotiate that in my lease, but we are sharing that AC unit and we don't have a contiguous office space.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one, especially when the AC is shared by two different offices.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, and we've asked them, and they'll come in and they'll adjust it, and then we'll adjust it, and then they'll adjust it. And, fortunately, we're very friendly, the two office suites, and we certainly would be miserable to sit in the hot air and have to work. So it's easier for us to be cold than it is for them to be hot. But I didn't occur to me that I should even look at that and have someone tell me, your AC might last only 3 years. Oh, and by the way, this is the office space that it works for. So you're sharing that with somebody else.
Yeah. That's you have to look at your lease and find out who's responsible for the AC unit. Maybe putting shades is the only thing I can think of.
Right. I mean, we have that. I mean, we've done that. It's just, to me, it's one of those things that I should have figured out before I signed the lease and at least had an opportunity to discuss it or know that it could be an issue rather than finding that out after the fact.
Yeah.
It's one of those pitfalls that business owners fall into.
Yes.
Well, another thing that sort of struck me while I was reading this chapter, because this, I read it because I was so taken aback thinking I committed one of these sins already as a business owner, was, the terms of art that are contained in commercial leases that we don't use in our regular everyday parlance. And the word that comes to mind for me is CAM. Mm-hmm. So what is that?
CAM is common area maintenance, that you will be paying the expenses of the landlord. And that is prorated based on the square footage that you have on the building. So you have an office building, you will pay your proportionate share of all the expenses of the landlord. That includes their property insurance, all the insurance, payroll. And in large commercial buildings, AAA buildings, you probably have a long list of items that are included in the CAM, including, payroll expenses, increases. I mean, you have a long list of items that are included, any type of repairs, maintenance, any assessments by the city, everything is included there, security, just name it. So that will be incorporated into this large group called CAM.
So it's really just the owner, the landlord, passing off their operating expenses on to the tenants over and above the base rent.
Correct, yes, because they're not going to pay. You will pay for their operating expenses. The rent is their profit.
I see what you're saying. Okay, so then let me ask you this. Typically in CAM, is there like a remodel charges that they would pass on to their tenants? Like if they're repainting and putting in, marble floors and things like that?
Yes. If it's included in the lease, the answer is yes, and most likely it is.
Okay, so I have noticed that my CAM fluctuates throughout the year. Yes. Is that common?
Possibly, yes. I mean, you should have the same CAM every month, and maybe once a year they'll adjust it based on, because what happened with the CAM is they estimate the expenses for the following year.
Got it.
And then at the end of the year, they'll do an audit and find out, okay, we have a greater expenses than we anticipated, so they'll give you a reconciliation bill at the end.
Yes.
For you to make the difference.
Yes, I've had that.
So yes, so that's what happens. They go ahead and they try to make estimates of what it's going to be, and they try to stay within a certain threshold. But if it goes over, they're going to go ahead and charge you more.
Interesting. Okay, so is there a way that a business owner looking at a lease for a first time, or even if they're thinking about renegotiating, is there some way that a business owner can verify that those CAM expenses are being paid?
There's a way, but it will cost.
So tell me about that.
Okay. Usually what I see in leases is that the tenant has the right to conduct an audit of the actual operating expenses of the landlord. However, it is at your own expense, and also if they find out that their landlord is within, and I'm gonna give you an example, within 10% of what they estimated, then you got to pay additional fees or something like that. So it is not something that I recommend. You're going to be in adversarial relationship with the landlord.
I see. Okay, so it doesn't make sense what you're saying to try and review the CAM charges to ensure that what you're paying is actually what's being spent.
Correct. Unless it's something, you're used to paying, $1,000 a month in CAM, using it as an example, and then all of a sudden you get a $10,000 bill at the end of the year for reconciliation.
Right.
At that point, you might want to exercise your rights
Right.
to say, no, I need to audit this.
That's a big jump.
Yes.
Right.
They send you a $500 bill because they misadjusted. You're like, fine, it's okay. So
Well, I like that you point out that doing that puts you in an adversarial position with your landlord, which is not where, as a business owner, you really want to be.
No.
All right, well, let's talk about
One point. As long as you pay your rent, pay it on time, most likely lenders will not bother you.
Right. They kind of just leave you alone. They're happy. You're happy. Everyone's doing what they want to be doing.
Correct. And don't make changes don't start like breaking down walls in the office, doing crazy stuff in your business. Most likely leave you alone. Just pay on time. They'll leave you alone.
Well, I think those are good. That's good advice.
Yeah.
Pay on time and they'll leave you alone.
Yeah.
What happens? So I know that I am now into my first renewal. So it's my second lease term. Okay. So I want to talk about renewals for a second. I was surprised when I read your chapter that oftentimes landlords are actually looking to have new tenants come in because they can charge more money. So what does a business owner need to look out for as they're getting ready to renew their lease if they want to stay in the location?
Renew early. I mean, if you have a lease that expires, say, this year, then you should have renewed by now, but already in October. So the options to renew gives you the power to decide whether or not you're going to stay in the property. So it gives you some control on the lease. So some landlords like to have tenants for a long time. They give you maybe 2 options to renew for 3 years, so that you're 6 years in,
right,
or 5 years, depending what their purpose and their goals are, having stability with tenants. And they also, you can negotiate the increase at the second renewal. Landlords most likely will not do that. Will do market rate. But if you're about to expire, you have not renewed, most likely they also increase their rent significantly, depending, or they bring another tenant in.
Right. So how far in advance do you recommend that business owners renew their lease?
Usually they have, in some leases I've seen 6 months. If you're not going to renew, to give 6 months notice.
That far in advance?
I will do it as far in advance, yes. Because it gives you some flexibility. What happens if you don't come to terms with the landlord? You might have to go to get a new place. If you're trying to renew your lease 2 months before it expires, you don't have enough time.
Right. That's actually a very smart thought. I renewed my lease 1 year in advance because I did not want the risk that the landlord was going to find someone else for my office suite. And I do not want to move because that's a real
the location.
Pain.
Yeah. And trying to relocate an office is a long time. Yeah.
It's expensive, and you have to find somewhere else, and it's not easy, especially if you're in a AAA office space and you want something similar. Now you've got to go find something and see if it's available. So it's not an easy endeavor all the way around.
Correct. Then you have to put additional deposits. It's just starting all over again. Yes.
Exactly. So let me ask you, you mentioned assigning a lease and a sublease. So what's the difference between the two?
When you say, for example, you sell your practice, you sell your business, and the new owner is going to take over the office space. So, but you have a couple of renewals left. So the landlord will assign that lease to that new owner. But the landlord has to give consent.
So you actually have to enter into a separate contract. The landlord has to enter into a separate contract.
It's called an assignment of lease agreement, and they say they adopt your lease. They step into your shoes, but it is assigned to that new person.
So does that really, so let's say you and I are entering into that type of contract, and I have the office space and you're going to take it over.
Yes.
Does that then relieve me of the legal and financial responsibility of the original lease?
In some cases it does. Some landlords, as a condition of the assignment, require you to guarantee the performance of the new owner.
So you and I need to know each other well, and I need to trust you if I'm going to stay on that lease.
Correct. And you can tell the landlord, I don't want to be the guarantee. It all depends. That's something that has to be negotiated. But I've seen them both. I've seen the landlord says, okay, you're off the hook. You're fine. We're comfortable with the new tenant. or they say, okay, I will do it, but you got to remain there.
So that sounds like an assignment of a lease. What's a sublease then?
Sublease is, say you have an extra office in your office space in your office suite, and you want to lease it to me, okay, in a separate office. And so, in order to do that, you have to get the landlord's consent, and then in order for them to agree to the subleasing. Otherwise, you're breaching the lease if you rent it to me without letting the landlord know.
So I have a question about that. Let's say I want to do that. I have an extra office space and I want to bring someone like you in because maybe we can do some business together. Yeah. If I don't tell them, what's the difference between me bringing you in and me hiring somebody else within my firm?
Hiring somebody is an employee that works for you.
Okay.
You're not subleasing an office. You're providing the workspace to your employee. Bring somebody like me to work as a separate business into your building, into your office space. That is a subletting. And the landlord needs to know because potential liability.
That's interesting. So what kind of liability could there be in the situation of if I'm choosing to sublet part of my office space to somebody else?
Say I have somebody come to the office to meet with me and they slip and fall in the building. And they say, well, what happened? I come to see Rich Sierra. I'm going to say, who's Rich Sierra? I don't have any tenant called Rich Sierra.
Okay, but let me ask you this. So that lease, right, requires me to carry a general liability policy.
Yes.
I am imagining, I guess, part of the liability that you're talking about here is so my office space may have it and I may have it in my law firm name, but Rich Sierra is not a part of my law firm, so that would not be covered under my insurance policy.
Correct. And the landlord also may not be covered because I'm not a tenant. But also a landlord might end up getting sued and you might end up getting sued by the landlord.
Got it. So then I would be indemnifying the landlord who got sued by the person that came in to see you. So that's why they want to be a part of the subletting process.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other terms of art other than, say, CAM, which we talked about, that business owners really need to be aware of?
I mean, a common term is a triple net lease.
Okay, so tell me about
lease,
that.
Just the most common terms. Triple net lease, you will pay basically taxes, insurance, and property tax. You pay all the expenses in addition to your base rent.
Okay, and that's like the CAM. That's what the CAM is.
If it's a gross lease, you only pay your rent. Everything is included within your base rent, and you might pay, here in Florida, sales taxes.
Okay.
But everything is included. You don't pay anything else. If it's a gross lease, you don't pay anything else. Triple net, you will pay all the expenses on top of your base rent.
So is triple net more common in office spaces and base rent might be more common in commercial, let's say if you have a commercial retail space?
Yes. If you're in office space, it'll be triple net, yes.
Okay, but other spaces aren't necessarily triple net?
There's more negotiable, yes.
Okay. Is there any other words of wisdom that you can give your listeners about a commercial lease as we start to wrap up our interview today?
Yeah, don't go at it alone. That's basically my advice. You take anything away from this interview, don't read lease agreements by yourself. They're written by attorneys. They're for the benefit of the landlord. You're already at a disadvantage if you attempt to interpret a lease on your own. And also, most likely, you will have a personal guarantee as well.
Oh, actually, I want to ask you about that. How common is a personal guarantee for a commercial lease?
Very common.
So does that come up with a new business owner, or is that just across the board landlords are trying to get personal leases for every tenant?
It's pretty much across the board. There are very few of them that I see without personal guarantees. Might be very older leases that they negotiated no personal guarantee. For the most part, most leases come now with a personal guarantee. Unless you negotiate that, you can negotiate a personal guarantee to say, if I'm in good terms, I'll guarantee the lease for 1 year, for example, or I'll give you an extra deposit.
Is there some way to, well, I guess that is sort of thinking out of the box, is a deposit or a shorter term lease?
Correct,
That's the way to sort of get around having a personal guarantee.
Yeah, but you can almost expect a personal guarantee on that lease, yes.
Well, that's good to know. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm glad I got to interview and ask you some questions.
Thank you, Angela, for being my host. I hope you do this again.
I would love to.
As I wrap up this episode 73 of Business SOS, first I want to thank Angela Neave for being the host today. We actually have another episode coming after this that we're going to do, episode 74. If you'd like to reach me, my email is rich@richsierra.com, and our website is floridasmallbusinesslegalcenter.com. Until next week, this is Rich Sierra with Angela Neave, and my goal is to help you succeed. Thank you.